Many of you have already tasted it. You grow quiet for a moment, not long, just a little, and the breath evens out, the chest loosens, and there's a shade less fear riding you. You find a touch more patience with the child, the spouse, the body. The struggle that had its claws in you softens, and for an instant, you see that life might be more than the problem that has been shouting at you all day. And yet, be honest with me. After you've prayed hard, after you've worn your knees and twisted your words heavenward with all the force you can muster, how often have you watched nothing change? Or worse, how often have you felt even more helpless, as if your pleading were echoing in an empty room? Now listen. I'm going to say something that will sound sharp, but it is the gentlest thing I can offer because it ends the suffering at its root. Prayer is not getting God to do something. Prayer is waking up to what God is. Do you see that? The first is a technique of desperation. The second is the act of waking from the dream. One attempts to move an outside power toward our need. The other recognizes presence as the very life within and lets that recognition be our sufficiency. Here is the compassionate diagnosis. When we ask God to fix the dream, we are testifying that the dream is real and that God is somewhere outside of it, managing it like a distant ruler. That very assumption is the hypnosis. It binds the eyes and it binds the hands. It keeps us praying at shadows and wondering why the light does not answer. Every time you beg, you quietly affirm, I am here in lack. You are there in abundance. Please close the distance. And I say to you, out of a heart full of love, there is no such distance, and there is no such God waiting to be moved. Never forget this. God isn't up in heaven waiting for you to pray. God is reality itself. But remember this, it doesn't come by asking God. It comes by actually making contact with God. Not more words, not better words, not louder words. Not conduct, no, contact. The moment you turn from rearranging effects and begin to awaken to the living presence, you are out from under the spell that says cause is out there and you must wrestle it into kindness. You will discover that true prayer is not a performance. It is an awareness dawning, a holy recognition rising until it outweighs the fear and undoes the dream at its root. So we begin here. Stop trying to persuade a deity to do your bidding. That's the very wheel that keeps you asleep. Turn instead to contact, inner communion, quiet realization, until you can say, simply and honestly, God is, and feel the hypnosis break. Then watch what follows. Never forget this. God isn't up in heaven waiting for you to pray. No, that's not the nature of God, and it never was. The picture of a celestial executive sitting behind a desk, stamps in hand, clocks on the wall, angels carrying in our forms, deciding which petitions to grant and which to delay. That is religious superstition. I say it kindly, but I say it firmly, because it has bound the hearts of sincere men and women for centuries. It isn't true. There is no such God. Do you see that? Now look at the hidden insult behind our begging. When we cry as if God were out of town until we call, we declare, "You are absent until I summon you." When we plead as if we could move the infinite by many words, we suggest, "You are unwilling until I convince you." And when we recount our troubles as if reading a report to a forgetful manager, we imply, "You are unaware until I inform you." That is what is smuggled into the tone of urgency and fear. Oh, the heart may be honest, the tears may be sincere, but the premise is wrong. Never forget this. God isn't up in heaven waiting for you to pray. God, being God, is omnipresence, omniscience, omnipotence. How then could God be absent, unaware, or reluctant? Do you see the contradiction? I am not scolding sincerity. I am exposing a premise. Our students are taught this. The failure of petition is not that you didn't care enough or speak beautifully enough. The failure is that asking presumes separation. Asking testifies, I am here in lack. You are there in supply. Close the distance. And I say to you with love, separation is the dream. All the eloquence in the world cannot make a dream into reality. Stop such nonsense, and stop such nonsensical religious teachings that have you chasing a far-off deity. The kingdom of God is within you. Closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. Wherever you go, the presence is the I at the center of your being. Never forget this. God is not out there to be persuaded. God is that life by which you are breathing this very moment. Think what it means. If God were a distant ruler, then prayer would be lobbying, a contest of influence, and the favored would win. But if God is the living presence, then prayer cannot be persuasion. It must be realization. If God were waiting to be informed, then ignorance would be authority over God. Oh no, the infinite is not educated by our reports. If God were undecided until we petitioned, then human will would be senior to divine love. Impossible. Do you see that? So we tear down the false image, not to leave you empty, but to free you from the insult and the weariness of trying to move what is already here. Never forget this. God isn't up in heaven waiting for you to pray. God is. And because God is, your work is not to shout across a distance, but to awaken from the very belief that there ever was a distance. When the premise is healed, the prayer is already half answered, because you have stepped out of the dream that required an answer and into the presence that is the answer. Now we come to the law of it, the practicality of it. So there is no mystery and no favoritism and no chance. As within, so without. When consciousness changes, experience changes. When consciousness remains hypnotized, experience repeats itself. It's not reward and it's not punishment. It is law. A seed put into the soil after its kind will produce after its kind. Do you see that? A mind sown with fear, lack, danger, disease, and absence will reap scenes that look like fear, lack, danger, disease, and absence. Not because God is sending them, but because you and I are gazing at the shadows and calling it prayer. Now look at what petition does to you. The very act of pleading, take away this pain, fix this bill, remove that enemy, change the weather, fastens your attention on the picture you fear. It trains the lens of the mind to hold it, examine it, rehearse it. And the mind, obedient servant that it is, will project again what you have insisted on beholding. If I could just get rid of this pain. No. Contact God, and you'll be free of pain. If I could just fix this person. No. Realize God, and the relationship will be healed in you first, and then you will witness harmony where conflict stood. If I could just make this boss fair, this market rise, this body obey. Oh no. It's the opposite. Turn from effects and establish cause. Make actually contact, and grace will be the new government. To pray at the level of effects, is to remain governed by effects. That is the whole trap. You accept the picture as law, then you beg the picture to let you go. What nonsense! Stop such nonsense. The spiritual law is this: consciousness is cause, form is effect. When you return to cause, when you rest in the recognition God is, when you consent to the presence that is closer than your breathing, this inner grace begins to act, and the outer, being effect, must conform. Seek first the kingdom, and all these things are added. Not wrestled, not negotiated, added. Understand it by a simple earthly illustration. If you drive through a red light, you will pay the penalty. Not because the city hates you, not because an officer chooses to curse you, but because traffic law operates. You disregarded law, you met the consequence. So it is here. When you violate the law of prayer by worshiping effects, by hating, fearing, pleading with shadows, you meet the penalty of living under those shadows. Not a God punishment, never, simply the operation of law. The moment you align with law, cause before effect, contact before conduct, the penalty dissolves because you are no longer in violation. So turn, quietly, firmly. Leave the picture as it is for now and withdraw your worship from it. Refuse to keep giving reality to the ache, the bill, the face, the forecast. Withdraw attention, not as an act of defiance, but as fidelity to truth. God is. Let that be your seed. Hold it, breathe it, abide in it until it abides in you. Then watch how the scene shifts of its own accord. Not by your will, but by the grace that, once loosed within, must appear without. Do you see that? Now, if we are to leave the picture alone, what do we take up in its place? Contact. Not conduct, not words, not an improved set of religious performances. Contact. Conscious union, a living awareness, a felt presence that outshines the argument of the senses. It is not a sentence we say to ourselves. It is not a list we send to heaven. It is the heart touching its source and finding there an unmistakable stillness that answers without words. Do you see that? Let me make it unmistakable. Don't pray for things. Pray for a realization of God. Say that with me inwardly and let it land. Don't pray for things. Pray for a realization of God. Because when God is realized as the very life and light within, the things, being merely effects, take their lawful place without your managing. But if you pray for effects, you enthrone effects and remain under them. Oh no. Turn and make actually contact, and the government will be grace. What is the texture of this contact? Quietness, receptivity, a posture of inner yes. It is the soul consenting to be lived by God rather than trying to live God. It is the relinquishment of the outline, the schedule, the this must happen and that must not. It is, nevertheless, thy will be done. Not as resignation, but as recognition that divine will is love itself, and knows more of your good than your fear can imagine. You become still. You let go of the argument, and you wait without hurry, without demand. Be still and know. Hold yourself in quietness and in confidence until confidence holds you. Do you see that? And please hear this. so we do not drift into another hypnosis. This is not self-hypnosis, not positive thinking, not a trick of the mind to force a result. You are not attempting to superimpose pleasant pictures upon frightful ones. You are not commanding form. You are allowing truth to reveal itself as itself, until the mind that loved to picture and to plan is reformed by presence. Positive thinking tries to make something happen. Contact unveils what is happening in God now. Self-suggestion strains to believe. Realization rests and beholds. Do you see the difference? In contact, words quiet down and attention turns from the surface to the center. You may gently breathe, "God is," not to convince God, but to loosen your grip on the dream. You may whisper humbly, "I," and then stop short of "I want," and rest in "I am," until the inward witness answers, "I am with thee." And when the interior has yielded, when that subtle sweetness or weight of peace presses on the heart, do not rush to cash it in for results. Remain. Abide. Let it complete its work in you. This is prayer. Not asking, not performing. Realization. Contact. And as surely as dawn follows night, the outer will show forth what the inner has become aware of, without strain, without bargaining, by grace. Do you see that? Now we set the foundation, so there is no more wandering, no more chasing voices in the wind. The kingdom of God is within you, not up there, not over there, not later on after you finish improving yourself. The kingdom of God is within you. Say it quietly and let it sink beneath the skull and into the center of you. Within you. Because until this moves from doctrine into realization, you will keep reaching out your hands to emptiness and calling that prayer, and you will come back tired. But the moment this becomes experiential, within me, here, now, prayer becomes resting instead of reaching, recognition instead of request. Do you see that? Never forget this. God is closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. If you travel across an ocean or sit still in your own kitchen, if you are on a hospital bed, in a courtroom, in a tax office, or at a graveside, the I of you that lives and moves and has being is God's own presence showing up as your life. The kingdom is not arriving, it is realized. The kingdom is not earned, it is recognized. And because it is already within, prayer cannot be a message sent outward to fetch God down. Prayer must be the inward turning to what already is. You do not telephone the sun to rise, you open the blind. You do not summon omnipresence. You remove the thought that it is absent, and you behold. Do you see? I say this so you cannot disqualify yourself another moment. Whether you are in failure or success, whether you are ashamed or applauded, whether you are trembling with grief or singing with joy, wherever you are, God is. If I make my bed in hell, thou art there. If I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, thou art with me. If I am on the mountain and light dances on every leaf, thou art there also. You carry your God right with you, wherever you go. Not as a lucky charm, not as a pocket text, but as the very life by which you breathe and see and love. The place whereon thou standest is holy ground, not because of geography, but because the holy stands as you. Do you see that? Why does this matter? Because the entire struggle of prayer dissolves here. If God is within, you do not have to break through a ceiling. You do not have to talk God into kindness. You do not have to wait for a signal from a far capital. You turn quietly, and the turning is prayer. You relax the forehead, you drop the shoulders, and you consent. Here, within, God is. The words are only a door. The reality is the felt assurance that you have not been left orphaned, that "I will never leave thee nor forsake thee" is not poetry. It is law. And when assurance dawns, effort ends. The search ends. The race ends. You are at home. Please let it be simple. There is only one thing you must know to be in prayer. God is. Not God is going to. Not God is if. Not God is when I improve. But God is. Breathe it without strain. God is. Let it clear the fog of fear. God is. Let it interrupt the old habit that looks out and begs. God is. And as you abide in that, even for a minute, you will feel the interior become more spacious, more alive, more still, and you will discover that contact has begun. The kingdom within has ended the search, and prayer, real prayer, has already been answered by its own presence. Do you see that? Now, because the kingdom is within, and because contact has begun, here is the next step, and it will sound backward to the old habit. Leave the outer life alone for now. Yes, I know the impulse. Fix the body, fix the bank book, fix the person, fix the clock. Oh no, that is the very wheel you have just stepped off. Do you see that? The work now is not to touch the levers of effect. The work is to remain in cause, contact, until grace, which is the law of God in action, begins to reform the picture from the inside out. Seek first the kingdom within. Let all these things be added in their own order. Never forget this. When you turn to the inner, you have not become passive. You have moved to the only point of true activity. What happens as you do this? It begins. It begins. It begins. Subtly at first, like dawn behind the eyelids, to influence the field of your life. Compulsions that used to feel like iron chains begin to soften without your white-knuckling them. Resentments you have rehearsed for years become tiresome to you, and then, one day, simply empty. You reach for the old anger and find nothing to grip. Habits fall off like leaves at their season. Not torn away, not fought to the death, released because the sap has gone back to the root. This is not willpower. This is grace. It doesn't merely forgive the fault while leaving the engine of it running. It heals the root so that the fruit changes of itself. Do you see that? And as this inner work proceeds, practical evidence appears, natural as a river finding its bed. Supply shows up, not as lottery luck, but as an idea in the night that becomes a phone call in the morning, that becomes a right placement by afternoon. A decision that had you twisted in analysis unties itself. You simply know, of course, and you walk in it without tremor. A relationship that felt like a courtroom turns into a table. A word you would have defended now doesn't need saying, and peace spreads where you used to argue. The body, long bullied by fear talk, starts to obey a different government. Pain loses its center stage. Breath steadies. Rest returns. And the physician's help meets you at the level where you can receive it. Not magic. Law. The law that form must answer to realized presence. So I say, leave the outer arrangements as they are, for now. Don't keep digging up the seed to see if it is sprouted. Abide. Be still and know. Let the inner pressure of grace build until action is given you, and when it is, it will not be frantic. It will not be bargaining. It will be a gentle order. Go here. Make that call. Decline that thing. Wait a day. Speak kindly to her. Pay this first. Rest now. And you will discover that obedience is easy because the power to do has come with the guidance. The vine carries the sap. The branch bears the fruit by being what it is. Do you see that? If, out of habit, you rush back to tug at outcomes, you will feel the strain again. That is your signal, not your condemnation. Return at once to contact. Whisper, "God is," until the shoulders drop and the heart warms. Then leave it again. Give grace its holy prerogative to be the causality of your life. Watch quietly. It begins, it begins, it begins. To reform health, to order supply, to make character sweet, to clarify the path, without your forcing anything. And when the picture shifts, you will know why. Not because you shoved at effects, but because presence, realized within, has fulfilled its own nature without. Do you see that? Now, I know what rises up for some of you at this very point. Yes, but if you knew what I have done, if you knew what I have failed to do, if you knew how long I have been this way. And I answer you out of a heart full of love. It makes no difference to what degree we're sinners. Absolutely none. Do you see that? Grace is not a wage paid for goodness. Grace is God being God. Never forget this. The moment you try to qualify for God by reforming your conduct first, you have slipped back into the hypnosis of separation. I, over here, must become worthy for God over there. Oh no, it's the opposite. Get God's grace, and it will make you good. Look at the pattern given us, so there can be no doubt.
Father, forgive them. They know not what they do.
Not after they improved, not after they apologized, not after they made restitution. Right in the midst of their ignorance, mercy spoke. And to the woman taken in adultery, no stoning, no lecture on earning her way into favor, but, "Neither do I condemn thee. Go, and sin no more." Do you see the order? Forgiveness before goodness. And the thief on the cross, with no life left to demonstrate a fresh record, hears, "This day shalt thou be with me in paradise." What is that but the revelation that forgiveness is the atmosphere in which awakening happens, and that awakening heals the root, so the conduct follows like fruit in season. Sins are not only forgiven, they are healed. Now don't mistake this for indulgence. 70 times 7 is not license. It is persistence until the underlying sense of separation is dissolved. Our students are taught this. You forgive and forgive and forgive. Not to excuse, but to wash. Each act of forgiveness is like bathing a wound until the infection releases. Each refusal to condemn is a crack in the shell of the self that believes itself apart. And one day, not by grim effort, but by grace, you reach for the old guilt, the old compulsion, and there is nothing there to grip. Do you see that? So turn it inward now, tenderly and without drama. Stop such nonsense as trying to earn access to your own life. You do not merit breath. You receive it. You do not merit the sun. You behold it. In the same way, you do not merit God. You awaken to God. The moment you cease bargaining, When I improve, then I will pray rightly, and begin to accept presence as already here. The mind becomes receptive to contact. Say quietly, "Father, forgive. I knew not what I did." And let the sting of self-accusation drain away. Whisper, "God is," and then, "I am." Not to excuse anything, but to stand again in truth. As you forgive another, you feel the door within unbolt. As you forgive yourself, you find that prayer is no longer a climb, but a homecoming. And in that homecoming, grace, needing no permission beyond your yielded heart, begins its holy work, dissolving the dream of distance and establishing you in the very presence that makes all things new. Do you see that? Now I must speak plainly, because love tells the truth that saves. Grace is not sometimes here and sometimes away. Grace is the nature of God, always present, always acting, always sufficient. But there is one barrier grace will not break: human willfulness expressing itself as hatred, judgment, condemnation, animosity, jealousy, envy, revenge. The cherished rightness that must punish. The tight fist that must control and outline how the scene will go. Do you see that? It is not that God withholds. God does not withhold. We obstruct. We raise our own wall and then complain of the darkness we ourselves have made. Understand the moral physics of it. Judgment is not merely a moral blunder. It is a density of consciousness that occludes realization. Criticism, contempt, sarcasm, resentments nursed like heirlooms, the incessant inner courtroom where we prosecute others and defend ourselves. These form a barrier, thought by thought, thick as habit, and grace does not violate it. Not because grace is weak, but because love does not force the door of a self that insists on being its own law. The will that says, "I will have this outcome, I will prove them wrong, I will make them pay," is the same will that prays and cannot receive, because it is praying to its own outline. Oh no, grace cannot break through human willfulness. So hear the corrective not as scolding, but as freedom. Practice the lack of judgment and active forgiveness, not as moral performance, not to be a nice person in the world's eyes, but as spiritual hygiene that keeps the channel open. Wash the mind of its daily grit. Lay down the inner weapons. Refuse the luxury of a grudge. Refuse the sweetness of a cutting remark. Refuse the replay of yesterday's wound. 70 times 7, not to excuse wrong, but to dissolve the false self that feeds on it. Maintain love, forgiveness, lack of judgment, lack of criticism, and there is no way to prevent God's grace reaching you. Do you see that? Now bring the principle to the very place it feels impossible, because that is your altar. The problem person, the partner, the boss, the neighbor, the child, may be the exact doorway through which you must stop asking God to fix effects and begin realizing God's presence. Do you see that? As long as you keep praying, change them, remove them, silence them, you are fastening attention on the picture and enthroning your will. Turn instead. Before the meeting, before the call, sit down, breathe, and whisper, "God is." Not, "God, make them behave," but, "God is the life here, the only presence, the only mind." Then, gently, "I," and stop short of plan and defense. "I am," and let the inner weight of peace never forget this. Leave people and outcomes to grace while you remove the barrier within. Let go of punishment, of proving, of managing. Consent. Nevertheless, thy will be done. With that, the wall thins, the channel clears, and the river that was always pressing at the banks flows into your affairs. Order, supply, healing, wisdom, by the nature of God being God. Do you see that? Let me paint you a simple picture so you can feel how this operates in daily life. Not as a sermon note, but as the rhythm of an awakened day. A man, one of our students, with a little shop, nothing grand, sat on a Thursday morning staring at a payroll he could not meet. He had called the clients who owed him and met voicemails. He had moved numbers from column to column until the ink bled. He had outlined 3 ways it must happen by noon or else. And the heart was pounding, the breath was short, and the inner courtroom was hot with blame. The client, the economy, the self. Do you see that? He remembered what you and I are practicing. He pushed the chair back, closed the ledger, and turned from the picture. Not to neglect duty, but to reestablish cause. God is, he breathed, slowly, not to get a check, but to come home. God is the life here, the mind here, the supply and order here. He let the shoulders drop. He refused the pleasure of worry. He whispered, I, and stopped short of I need, and rested in I am, until that inward weight of quiet returned. And in the quiet, without drama, a simple nudge. Walk to the post office now. Not why, not how does that pay payroll, just walk. He went. No outline, no bargain, just obedience to a gentle order. At the corner, he nearly collided with a woman leaving a building. I've been meaning to call you, she said. I'm terribly sorry. Your check has been on my desk. She reached into her bag and handed him an envelope. He smiled, blessed, and kept walking. At the post office box sat 2 pieces of mail. One was a small refund they had been told would take months. The other, an order from a new customer who had found them by accident and needed the work begun that afternoon with a deposit enclosed. By 2 o'clock, payroll was met without drama, and a path for the following week opened naturally. Now, how do you think that happened? Presence did not arrive at noon because he prayed hard. Presence was the reality at 9, at 10, at 11. Contact did not create supply. Contact removed the hypnosis that was blinding him to the lines along which grace was already moving. Omnipresence means there is no godless corner of the street, no godless bank, no godless mailbox. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there thy hand shall lead me. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, thou art with me. Do you see that? There is no distant hour at which God begins. There is only the hour at which we awaken. Another time, and this will sound familiar, the flight was canceled, plans in tatters, frustration ready to argue its case. The student sat, turned, and yielded. Nevertheless, thy will be done. In the calm that followed, he felt, wait, not scramble, not rebook at any cost. Wait. An hour later, a new routing appeared. A seat opened next to a person who became the answer to a months-long problem, and the timing put him in the right room for the needed meeting. Guidance? Yes, but not favoritism. Simply cooperation with what grace was already arranging. Translate the awe into practice so we don't turn this into magic stories. This is not chance smiling on some and frowning on others. This is law. inner realization becoming outer direction and supply. Don't pray for right turns and lucky breaks. Pray for a realization of God. Hold to God is. Release your outline, and then obey the next gentle order. Sometimes it will be walk, sometimes call, sometimes wait, sometimes apologize, sometimes rest. And you will find, not once, but as a way of life, that doors open as you arrive, that ravens feed you on unlikely ledges, that the oil in your little cruise does not run out before the need is met. Not spectacle, sanity, the normal fruit of omnipresent grace where contact is real. Do you see that? Now let us set before us the pattern of an awakened mind in prayer. So simple that a child can do it, and so profound that it breaks the back of fear. Prayer without petition. Not asking, not bargaining, not arranging. Recognition, trust, resting in presence. Do you see that? This is not an attitude we work up. This is the state that dawns when contact is even faintly felt. Assurance becomes the climate of thought, and in that climate, grace moves without obstruction. The mind is not busy. The heart is not pleading. There is an inner yes to what God already is. Listen to the psalm, not as poetry for funerals, but as the living blueprint of this assurance. The Lord is my shepherd. I do not lack. He settles me into green quiet, leads me beside the stillness that restores me. He turns me back to life when I am frayed, and His ways are right because they are His. Even if I walk a road that looks like shadow and looks like death, I do not fear, for you are here. Your nearness steadies me. You set a table for me where trouble thought it owned the room. You pour until the cup runs over. Goodness, mercy, these are the companions of my days, and I dwell in the holy now and always. Not a petition in the whole prayer. Recognition, assurance. Do you see that? Now, assurance is not denial. It is not closing the eyes to a storm and chanting, "It's sunny." It is opening the interior eye to the source before the weather report changes. The vine is intact before the branch feels the sap. The well is full before the bucket touches water. Assurance says, God is, therefore supply is ordained in God. God is, therefore guidance is present in God. God is, therefore life is safe in God, before appearances salute or argue. This is not make-believe. This is law. Cause before effect. Presence realized before picture reformed. Feel the difference in your own body, this moment. Petition tightens. It knots the stomach, lifts the shoulders, narrows the breath. It stares at the picture and pleads. Assurance relaxes. The breath deepens. The jaw softens. The chest opens. Be still and know becomes natural instead of heroic. Do you see that the relaxation itself is a doorway to contact? It is the mind consenting to be governed, the heart consenting to be held. In that yielding, the subtle witness of presence, sometimes sweetness, sometimes weight, sometimes only quiet, announces itself. And prayer has already been answered by its own being. So let your prayer take on this shape, not as performance, but as truth-telling. God is my shepherd. I do not lack. God is my light. I do not stumble. God is my life. I do not fear what life already governs. Whisper it without strain until the body remembers, until the mind stops reaching outward and rests inward. And then be still. No request, no outline, only the steady beholding of what is. From that assurance, you will rise with guidance you did not invent, and the day will bear witness that recognition is the real prayer, and grace the real doer. Do you see that? Let us make it so simple that you cannot miss it in a busy day. 7 minutes. Not to fix anything, not to move pieces on the board. 7 minutes to establish cause, to touch the root, to realize presence and let grace be the governor. Do you see that? Take it at the kitchen table, in a parked car, on a bench, before a meeting. Morning, noon, evening if you wish, but even once will show you the taste of freedom. First, stop the emergency. Push back from the desk, close the screen, set the phone face down. Sit. Breathe as you are breathing, no tricks, no counted schemes, and refuse to rehearse the problem. The mind will run to the picture like a hand to a sore tooth. Gently say, "Not now." For these minutes, leave the outer life alone. Do not pray for the body, the bill, the person, the outcome. Oh no. You are turning from effect to cause. Drop the shoulders. Let the jaw loosen. Let the breath come and go without management. Be here. Do you see that? Second, soft recognition. Without strain, like opening a blind to a sun already risen, whisper within, God is. Again, without trying to believe, without pleading, God is. Feel how the words loosen the clutch of fear. God is, closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. Let the phrase be a doorway, not a battering ram. After a few breaths, let even the words thin until there is only a quiet awareness that something faithful is here, that you are not orphaned, that presence is the atmosphere in which you are sitting. Stay in that. God is. Third, yielding. Now let thy will be done become an actually surrender. Give up the outline. Give up the personal rightness. Give up the clock. Say inwardly, nevertheless, thy will be done. And feel what that releases. Tension, bargaining, the inner courtroom. Stop such nonsense as insisting how grace must look on your timetable. Consent to love being the law of this moment. If a protest rises, let it pass like a weather cloud. You are not resigning, you are recognizing. Do you see that? Fourth, identity shift. Gently bring the word I into awareness, but do not hitch it to want or fear. Simply I, and wait. Let it descend from head noise to center. Then, humbly, I am. Not as arrogance, not as a human boasting, but as the recognition that the life that is God is the I of you. I and the Father are one, not as doctrine, as felt fact. Abide a few breaths in I am, until the inward weight, the sweetness, or the deep quiet makes itself known. Do not rush. Let the branch feel the sap. Fifth, the seal. Offer gratitude without a list. Thank you, not for this or that, but for being. Rise without strain. Do not grab the problem as a souvenir. Carry this felt presence into the next right action. Walk, call, wait, write, rest, as you are inwardly moved. If the mind reaches to outline again, return for a breath to God is, and then to I am. In 7 minutes, you have changed cause. Presence has been recognized. Will has yielded. Identity has been centered. Now grace, which was never absent, has a clear channel. And your day, without your forcing it, will begin to show that presence is more real than the dream. Do you see that? Now we prove it. Not on a platform with theatrics, but in the very ordinary place where the dream used to run you. Demonstration is not fireworks. It is conduct. It is calm where you used to tremble. Kindness where you used to sharpen the tongue. Wisdom in timing where you used to lunge. Clean no where you used to please. Clean yes where you used to avoid. Do you see that? This is the waking up proof that a new government has touched your mind, and that your feet, your hands, your schedule, your money, your words begin to answer to it. Take the phone. It rings in the old self tenses. Bad news? Demands? Conflict? Stop such nonsense. Let it ring once more. Breathe. God is. Not to get a good outcome, but to return to cause. Shoulders drop. I am. Now answer, not with a theater smile, but with the quiet that comes of presence. You will hear differently. You will speak fewer words. You will find yourself guided to either listen or bless and say, let's take this later, or resolve it cleanly. Do you see that? Same phone, different center. Take conflict. You are walking into the room that used to feel like a courtroom. Before you cross the threshold, 3 breaths. God is here. Nevertheless, thy will be done. I am. Leave your briefcase of indictments at the door. Enter without judgment. Refuse the inner luxury of punishing. If a word is given you, it will be accurate and merciful. If silence is given you, it will be strong. And often, the weather clears because you did not bring your storm. Take money. The figure on the screen shouts. Do not bargain. Do not pace. Sit. God is the order here, the supply here. Let panic drain. Then act as one governed. Pay what is yours to pay without drama. Make the call you are inwardly led to make. Decline the thing that is show. Accept the thing that is seed. Wiser timing will appear because you are not pushing time from fear. Take the body. A sensation flares, and the mind reaches for 10 explanations and 12 searches. Oh no. First, contact. God is my life. Rest a moment in the felt quiet. Then, do what love would do. Take the medicine. Call the practitioner or the physician. Drink the water. Lie down. Walk in the sun. Without obsession. Without reading a verdict into the sensation. The body begins to answer to peace when it is no longer bullied by fear. Now, here is the re-entry that saves you 1,000 times a day. When the dream shouts again, and it will shout, do not argue with it. Argument fastens you to it. Return to contact, again and again. A minute, a breath, a glance inward. God is. Nevertheless, thy will be done. I am. The reactivity will try to regain the throne. Let it pass like weather. Your repeated return breaks its authority. Do you see that? Never forget this. Stop asking God to fix the dream. Stop such nonsense as pleading with effects to change their costumes. Contact God and wake up. Then begin, this very hour, to act as if it were so. Answer the phone as if God is. Spend and save as if God is. Speak and keep silence as if God is. Care for the body as if God is. Set appointments as if God is. And when you forget, because sometimes you will, remember quickly and return. Walk as the branch that knows the vine is present, the sap is moving, the fruit is certain. Act as if it were so, because it is so. Do you see that?